Alethea Felton, and welcome to the Power Transformation Podcast. If you're struggling in your life with self-sabotaging and negative thoughts that leave you feeling stuck and limit you from moving forward, I can help you. As a holistic health and empowerment coach, I help people identify, challenge, and conquer those thoughts in order to make simple and practical changes to improve overall wellness. Let's remove those limitations, for the time is now to create your power transformation. Hey, y'all. Hello. Welcome to yet another episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. But, y'all, this is just not any other episode. This marks the year anniversary of the Power Transformation Podcast. Can you believe that? It has been a year. I launched this podcast December 7th, 2022, and the day that this is released is December 6th, 2023. So yeah, I'm counting that as the year, and I am so excited. I am so thrilled. I am very grateful to all of you who have been a part of this power transformation community, and for people who are those who have been there since day one, and others who are just now listening for the first time. I welcome you so much. This episode is going to be all about lessons that I've learned since launching this podcast. I don't really come up with my titles for these episodes until I record them, but I have the actual idea of what I'm going to actually speak about, or the guests that I'm going to interview and what they're going to talk about. And so today I want to focus on that very topic of what I have learned in this year as a podcaster, but specifically what this podcast has taught me about myself, because I think that is so powerful. I didn't do a big hurrah about the 1 year anniversary. Maybe I should have. In early November, I was focused on my South Africa trip. That was absolutely amazing. And, you know, I've been in so much transition, as I've shared with all of you. So I didn't really think about doing something huge for the 1 year. But you live and you learn. I don't feel badly that I didn't, but moving forward, I just know, okay, for milestones, do something big, promote it in a huge way. But I'm getting more and more ideas even for moving into 2024. Can't believe I'm saying that, y'all. 2024 is around the corner. And just the fact that I have made it a year doing this podcast and having an episode every week is truly a blessing, and I am thankful for that. And I give a shout out. He's very humble and he doesn't want recognition, but I'm going to give a shout out to my business coach, John Narrell, who even planted the seed for the idea of me having a podcast, and for being the one to show me the ropes in this podcast life, and for encouraging me to post a weekly episode. And it has definitely paid off in a valuable way. And I'm not even talking financially as of yet, because this podcast is not yet monetized. I'm not making money off of this podcast. That was not the intention going in. Of course, as time moves on, who knows where it'll take me. But what I mean about how valuable it's been is that it has allowed me to get this content out to so many people and to have steady growth. I am so glad that I'm in the top 10% of all podcasters. My ultimate goal is to be in the top 5%, and then 2.5%. And y'all know what else? 1%. The sky is beyond the limit. I don't know. But the fact is, whoever is supposed to get this message will get it. So that's what this is all about. I want to go ahead and just start this journey again with an affirmation. And I want to say it once, and then you repeated. I am grateful for living in the present moment. Yeah, some of you may say, what? I'm grateful for living in the present moment. Yes. Yes, that is the affirmation, because I think that sometimes as human beings, we can think ahead of ourselves and think about what could be and neglect what is directly in the present and directly in front of us. And I am grateful for living in the present moment. I am grateful for taking in this moment that I have to share my voice, to breathe, to be planted where I am, and to bloom where I am planted. You know, this podcast journey has not been an easy one. And what I mean by that is that it takes discipline to stay consistent with something. It takes discipline to come up with ideas and topics. It takes discipline to connect with guests. But oh my goodness, how beautiful this journey has been. I have been blessed enough, and I use the word blessed not lightly, because I do give credit to God for where I am, and that this is episode 57. When I launched the podcast, what I did was I uploaded a trailer and then 5 episodes. So if you backtrack to December 7th, 2022, you will see that when I started, I dropped 5 episodes off of the bat. Why did I do that? I did that because I wanted to give listeners a taste of what this podcast was about. Because it's fine, it's not a criticism if a person only drops 1 episode, but having at least 3, 4, or 5 gives the listener some type of an idea as to who I am as the podcast host, but also what this podcast is going to be about. And podcasts, just like any type of business or branding or whatever, evolve. They shift and they change over time. Even with me as a holistic wellness and empowerment coach, 5 years ago, when I first got certified, I was simply a holistic health coach, looking at nutrition, looking at exercise, but also looking at mind, body, and spirit. And then the more courses I took, I got certified as a life coach, and I transitioned even more into what I wanted my brand to be. And yet again, it's another rebranding strategy that I'm doing. I also want to say, oh, this is important too. And I will talk about the actual podcast and what I've learned. But since birthing this podcast, I'm happy to announce that I have been able to get Alethea Felton Coaching LLC off the ground and running. And so therefore, I am now, please listen carefully, I am now accepting potential new clients, which means that people may book a free 60-minute consultation with me for possible wellness and life coaching. So that is something that is happening as of now. And for you to do that, I'll put it in the show notes where you can book a free 60-minute consultation with me. It will be virtual, but all of the details are there. So that is also something that this podcast has birthed, is that now I'm stepping even more into building this niche of wellness coaching and empowerment coaching and helping you get to your next in life. That's what I do. I help you get to whatever is next in your life, despite whatever you think is standing in your way. And I do that through a holistic, integrative approach of mind, body, spirit, and more. So if you are stuck in something, if there's a life trigger or a life pain point that you have, that you are just saying, I can't do XYZ goal because of this happening in my life, then I can help you. The Power Transformation Podcast helped to birth that clarity about where that gifting lies in me in terms of helping people to get to their next. Because the Power Transformation Podcast is all about how you as a person have the power from within to really transform and change a lot of the trajectory of your life. We aren't in control of every single thing, but we can control how we view and perceive life's circumstances, how we perceive life's challenges. What are we going to do when the times get tough? And it's not covering up, it's not masking the reality of what we go through in life, but it is showing tangible steps and ways that you can make a difference in your life and in the lives of others. So this podcast, it has taught me a lot about myself. Like I said, in terms of discipline, how to stay consistently doing something and not giving up even when you want to, not giving in when maybe a particular episode only has 1 or 2 listeners in a day. But then by the time the full week cycle is over, then it has more. Doing this has taught me is that whoever gets the message is who it's supposed to touch and reach. And that is the beauty of it, is that this podcast has taught me that people are yearning for practical things that they can do in their life to improve their mindset, to improve their overall health, whether it be physical health, financial health, relational health, spiritual health, whatever that health is, this podcast is helping people to do that. Something else that I've learned in this year of podcasting is to not get stuck in the comparison trap of what other people are doing. Sure, you can have guidance. You can have people that have their own podcast to give you pointers and tidbits. But what I mean is I've had to learn to not worry about if this person over there has 10,000 listeners or subscribers. Whereas if mine has a lot of listeners, but not a lot of subscribers, I had to get out of my head with that, because at first it was disheartening. Like, why are people sharing? Why are people liking? But why aren't they subscribing? And it's not even because people weren't subscribing intentionally. It's just that life gets busy. People are doing their own thing. And then I had to understand that I still have a responsibility of remaining consistent, coming up with valuable content, getting it out there, and to know that at the right time, the right place, the right people will hear it, and that I don't stop, I don't quit. It's easy to just quit and just give up if you're not getting the results that you want to get. But when I look at my stats, when I look at my trends, I have such joy in knowing that this podcast is reaching other countries beside the United States. I have listeners in Canada. I have listeners in the continent of Africa. I have listeners in Europe. I have listeners in Asia. South America, I still want to get to, and Australia as well. So if any of you know people in those continents, specifically South America, I speak Spanish, but I'm not going to at this point translate my podcast. But if you know people that live in South America, Central America, Latin America, but specifically the continent of South America who speak English, share this podcast with them. I would love to get listeners in all continents. And you know something else? If you know somebody who works as a scientist in Antarctica, share this podcast with them and get them to subscribe. It seems far-fetched to some, but I do believe this podcast can reach every continent. I do believe that the power transformation movement can reach every nation, despite what's happening in the world. So this podcast has taught me to not worry or dwell on what other people are doing, that I need to stay in my creativity. Yes, again, I read articles, I read pointers, I implement things, but I've got to make this what it's supposed to be for me and to see the trends on what are people liking, what are people listening to, what is resonating most with my audience, and continuing to expand my reach to get diverse guests. And I'm just not talking about racially or ethnically diverse. My guests think for themselves. They don't always think like I do. It would be a boring podcast if everybody thought like me. The point is that my guests are sharing a message that will help the world and will get people to continue to shift and transform their mindsets and their lives about whatever topic that is. So that's also something this podcast has taught me. Moreover, this podcast, in this year of podcasting, this podcast has awakened my ideas, my passion, and my creativity even more. I knew I already had creativity, and I'm quirky by nature, and I think a lot, and I'm a bit eclectic, kind of zany, a tad bit hyper. But what I mean is that I'm always thinking, and this podcast, being a podcaster, has really awakened more of my intuition and insight. I am I would say that I'd already prayed for wisdom and discernment, but it's taken all of that to another level because I needed further insight on how to better present the topics and how to be a more effective interviewer. One of the comments that I get from a lot of people, especially my guests, I'm getting more and more guests tell me, you are an incredible interviewer. And fellow podcast hosts who are telling me, I'm learning so much from your interviewing style that I want to learn more. That is such a high compliment that I have gotten from people, is that I have a unique way of asking questions. I never considered it before doing this podcast, but when I reflect on my life, I go back to childhood with that because my parents, and I share some of this in my story, which is an earlier episode. Actually, it's episode 1. But when I was growing up, my parents talked to their children in a way where we answered thoroughly, we thought about our responses, and it got us to open up. We had a household where it was a very inviting, welcoming space where we were comfortable to talk about pretty much everything. Now, everybody didn't always agree with that. Some people in my own family thought that my parents shared too much with us as kids, but it was never anything inappropriate. But it was a space where we felt safe to ask our parents anything, to respond honestly and openly about things. It wasn't a very secretive or hidden or brush things under the rug household. And that, I think, is what developed a lot of my questioning. It wasn't a nosiness, but the way that my parents asked questions, especially my father, with him having a psychiatric counseling background, Daddy knew how to, and still does, but knew how to ask questions that would give more open-ended responses as opposed to closed questioning. And what I mean by that, a closed question is something like this. How are you today? Fine. Okay. Or it's a yes, no answer type of a question. An open-ended question is this. What are 2 things that have gone well for you this week? That's an open-ended question. Listen carefully to the difference. How are you? What are 2 things that have gone well for you this week? You see the difference? An open-ended question allows a person to let their guard down some while not feeling attacked, and they actually have time to reflect. So when I had that growing up, and then when I ultimately became a teacher, and then later did other roles in the school system for 20 years, whether it was a classroom teacher, a team leader, a learning and development specialist, instructional coach, whatever it was in that realm where I was working with other teachers and adult learners in addition to children, I had to ask questions that would be self-reflective of the one receiving it. And when I earned my national board certification in teaching, that process was the most intense, strenuous, rigorous mental process I've been in my life. I've ever undertaken in my life. And it's because for national board certification, they asked questions that went so deep into thinking about the why and the how and the rationale behind teaching and instruction. So when I'm asking questions, it's not because I'm trying to be a teacher, but I'm really trying to pull out the best in a person. I'm trying to really pull out what it is that has caused them to be who they are today and how that can be transferred elsewhere. So this podcast has taught me that when I interact with my guests, or even when I think about what I'm going to share in a solo episode, I'm always kind of going through this questioning process. Another thing that having this podcast in a year has taught me is to open my mind even more to the power of believing in what seems to be impossible. I say that because, as I've shared in the past, I never even intended on doing a podcast. It was my coach, John Narrow, who gave me the idea, and I still brushed it off because I had never even listened to a podcast in my life. Honestly, a full episode. I'll put it like that. Never listened to a full episode of one in my life. So when he's telling me that he thought I would be great doing a podcast, I'm like, but John, I don't even listen to a podcast. And I get that from some people at times who they might love me, but don't subscribe to my podcast. And they say, well, I don't listen to podcasts. Y'all, I had the same mindset. I didn't listen to them. And if I didn't listen to them, what was the point in me doing one? But I let my guard down in a good way. I became more open-minded toward the idea of it. And I started to find a few here and there that I liked. And I found that when I was driving, working out, cleaning the house, relaxing, working, doing certain things, especially during the pandemic, because John gave me the idea like at the end of 2021, the end of 2021. It took me another year to actually launch it, but he gave me the idea at the end of 2021. So I took maybe that last year of the pandemic and really started looking into it. And then, of course, you all know faith is important to me. So I prayed about it. I really asked the Lord, I asked God to really let me know if this is something that I should do. Because just because a person gives you an idea doesn't mean you have to take it. I pray about every decision in my life. I truly do. And so, I wanted to make sure this was going to be something that God ordained and approved of for me, but that also it was something that was going to be valuable and helpful and how I could be used to reach so many other people in a good way. So that's what else this podcast taught me. Also, something else that I'll tell you in closing is that being a podcaster and doing this podcast for a full year now, it really showed me that, whoa, I can really do anything that I desire that's positive and good and uplifting if I put my mind to it and put in the work behind it. I share often that a huge part of my story is that medically there are certain things that I'm diagnosed with, but I am really thriving and excelling beyond what any doctor could have ever imagined, that I am literally a living miracle, and I don't take that for granted. Where I am in life, what I'm doing, I've beaten so many odds and continue to do so. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but I say it because it proves to me that if you have the determination and the fortitude and the resilience, oh, baby, you can build a kingdom. And I say kingdom in a positive way, not the type of kingdom that's going to squash and trump on other people and make other people feel less than, but a kingdom in which everybody can rise and rise to the occasion of it all. I am a living witness of that. And with me being somebody who is still here and not worried about what tomorrow or the next day or the next year will bring to my life, I'm going to choose to keep living out my purpose and mission of helping others get to their next in life, of helping others understand the power of a growth mindset, of helping others feel what they feel, not ignoring the realities and the hardships and the challenges, and sometimes the plain ugh and yuck that this life can bring, but offering another way of viewing it and handling it. I am not insensitive to what happens in this world, of the atrocities and the horrors. I am not oblivious to what's happening even now in parts of the world where there is war and conflict. I'm not naive to that, and I don't negate what's happening. But even in looking at different stories and testimonies of people from elsewhere globally who have overcome tremendous odds. And while my challenge may have been health, that's not the only thing hard that I've gone through in my life. There's been other areas that could have just made me absolutely want to give everything up, and I didn't. And I know that you too can continue to push through whatever comes your way, and that you can choose to move forward and stronger and braver with more courage and faith than ever before, because I've done it. Part of my coaching and this podcast is that it's birthed out of my pain. It's birthed out of struggles. Is that I've chosen to take what was incredibly hard and challenging and turned it around for my good. That is what the Power Transformation Podcast is all about. And that is what I am learning more and more about myself and showing you and others how to do the same. I am excited about what the next year will bring. I do not worry about what could happen that might not be great. I choose to focus on what could go right. I will cross bridges as I get to them, and I will continue to enjoy the ride. And even in the past, y'all, when I was sick and hospitalized, even in those moments, this is no joke, I still made the best of it. I still had nurses and doctors laughing and cracking up and sharing jokes, even from a hospital bed. Yeah, I cried at times. I had sadness, but I pushed myself enough to get therapy and to find something to even laugh about. So I'm not a superhero. I am not superhuman, But I do know that God is my strength, that God also lives within me, and that I share God's DNA because I am God's daughter, beloved child. And because of that, I want to help others tap into the power that they have already innately inside of them to transform areas of their life that perhaps they think could never change, and to help you show others that you care and how they can do the same. Thank you for being on this incredible journey with me for a year. There's more in store for the Power Transformation community. And I'm excited because you're a part of it. And I encourage you to please share, subscribe if you haven't. Maybe you're just listening, but you haven't gone to Spotify or Apple or iHeart or something and liked or followed or subscribed. Leave a 5-star rating and leave a review. But get this message out. That's what I do ask. Please get it out. The world needs this, and they need people like you to get them on board with it as well. I'm going to close out with the affirmation. And again, as a reminder, I am accepting clients. You may contact me on any of my social media at Alethea Felton. You may send me an email, also coach@aletheafelton.com, and I can send you the link on where you can sign up for a free 60-minute coaching consultation with me to see if what I offer as a wellness and empowerment coach, a holistic one, is what you need to help you get to your next in life. So yeah, let me know. I look forward to hearing from you and sharing this podcast with others. I'm going to say the affirmation once and you repeat it. I am grateful for living in the present moment. If you enjoyed today's show, then you don't want to miss an episode. So follow the Power Transformation Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you usually listen, and remember to rate and review. I also invite you to connect with me on social media at Alethea Felton. That's at ALETHEAFELTON. Until next time, remember to be good to yourself and to others.